locate that.
I'd like to call the July 16th, 2018 meeting for the Old Town Planning Board to order. And we don't, I see from our agenda, we don't have any minutes prepared.
Nope, I'll get back on track with that. What I've done is taken the discs from the meetings and just put them in the planning board
Okay.
files.
Our last meeting was in February, so forgive us if we're a little rusty, but we're moving right on. We will move to the, okay, well, it says here, remove from the table, well, okay, yeah, we previously tabled a request for a contract zone change from C1 commercial business to R2 general residence located at 18 Water Street, tax map 26, lot 15-A, case number 1537. And we are removing that from the table and bringing that back to active consideration tonight at this planning board meeting. So is there a representative? Would you like to just go up there and state your name just for the record and all that?
Yes, I'm James Dubé, and I own the real estate at 18 Water Street. I put in for a contract zone change for the downstairs back portion of the building. The front half is going to stay commercial. And as previously in Water Street, a lot of stuff has been turned to residential. A lot of square footage, way bigger than what I've asked for, and you know, I don't think we're out of character with what we're looking for. And that's really the story.
So I understand from the letter that we received from Dave that you want to put a residential unit downstairs on the first floor and reserve the front part for potential commercial
For
use.
commercial, yes.
And if I get that right, Dave?
That's correct.
Okay. So in order to do that, we have to enter into a contract zone. We can't, for that particular spot.
The agreement is in your packets, which explains basically the square footage of that back unit. And that basically that if you wanted to do something other than a business in the front, you'd have to come back to the board. But at this point in time, he's just looking to do the 2 units upstairs, which he's allowed to do by
Right.
ordinance. And those are already built, and I'm gonna do final inspections on those this week. And wants to utilize the back portion of the building because it has a nice river view. There's a deck out there now for residential, with the front portion being.
And then, you know, the 2 remaining units facing Water Street are still reserved for commercial use at this point?
There's only one gonna face Water Street.
Just one?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's splitting the building, if you look at it, front half, or a third is commercial, and the back is residential.
All right, well, is there anything else you want to tell us about that, or?
No, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, you know, it's
Okay.
you know,
Well,
as you can see, there's, you know, I'm keeping part of it commercial for, hopefully, to find a commercial tenant. Commercial tenants are a little tough to find for downtown. I mean, I've got one I remodeled 2 years ago that's still empty. I get calls once in a while, but nothing major has happened with that yet. You know, and
I understand. It's certainly hard to get businesses to locate downtown. So,
sure is.
are there any questions from members of the board? I also want to note for the record here that we do have a full complement of planning board members here tonight.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
before you had asked us to table it because
Right,
we weren't all here. So we're all set.
yes.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Dubé?
Is there sufficient parking and egress to the parking?
Yes. Mr. Dubé purchased the city-owned parking behind there
Okay.
because we had a dry hydrant at one time, but with the change of the river flows, it's not useful for us anymore, so Mr. Dubé purchased that from the city a year and a half ago.
So how many parking spaces will that entail, and how many are there? Do you know? If there are
I'm
3
gonna say
units,
he's got
at least a minimum
12 or
of
15
6.
spaces.
Okay,
Yeah, which
More
is
than
okay.
2 per apartment, so 6, and then an
Yep.
overflow for commercial.
And we need 2 per apartment.
Right.
Right, yep.
Plus you have on-street parking in the front.
Right.
And then there's parking also in front of the American Legion, and they have parking out behind.
Okay, anyone else on the board have any questions regarding this
Once this
application?
is changed, though, it can't be changed back.
Oh, it can be
Oh,
changed
yeah,
back.
a contract.
It would have to then
It has
come
to
back
come
to
back.
you to nullify this contract.
Okay, well, Mr. Dubé, if you want to sit down, we'll continue on here, but thank you for
Thank you.
allowing us to ask questions. Any other concerns or comments?
Actually, mine is, and we've had this conversation, is this setting a precedent even stronger that, because this list that was sent out of all the other first floor vacancies, are we setting a precedent that this is all now gonna become residential?
Because it is something that has to go through the contract zoning, there is no precedence.
But can we
It might.
legally say no from now on as a
Yeah.
planning board?
I would definitely.
Under a
say so.
contract zone, yes, because it's completely up to us.
Because the applicant is asking for something which is allowed by ordinance through contract zone, but it's not an allowed use within that zone. So yes.
Right. So we could, if Mr. Dubé, for instance, wanted to build like an ammunition factory there, we would probably not be allowed to do it, number one, and we'd probably have a problem with it, number two. So that doesn't set any precedent for somebody else who wants to do that in the future. It's up to us completely.
On that section of Water Street also, there's only the Legion
The Legion. yeah.
and his business, and the dog groomer is still there.
Kelly is still there, yeah.
So, does that answer your question?
I'm not comfortable with just that
Okay.
because there's nothing, for instance, I had a client a few years ago that wanted to change from resource protection to residential, to be able to build on a resource protection, and there was a series of steps that had to be gone through to determine that change. See, we don't have that. We just have someone coming forward and saying, I want to do this. We're going to say yes or no, but there's nothing, there's no outline that, we check off the boxes, so.
For us, there's no outline to check off the boxes for resource protection. A soil scientist goes out.
Well, you have to meet, the soil scientist
That's
has to
right, he
go
has
out.
to,
You
yeah.
have to have these things put in place.
So what would you want, what would you have in place? What would you
I
want?
don't know, I'm just saying that, see, there is no, so when one of these people comes forward now, we have no way of saying no, really, other than we say no, and then does that put the city at odds or the potential lawsuit?
I don't, not an attorney, but I do not believe so.
But all these pieces of property do not have off-street parking. That's why I asked the question. That one does have off-street. None of these would have off-street parking.
Correct.
A couple of them might, like.
They
Jason
might, but
Pizza
I'm saying,
has.
but you can't use city parking as your parking
Well,
requirement, right?
And as I understand it, also, I mean, the city council can override
And
any
that is-
contract zone that we,
That is correct.
so.
'Cause
it's
this
not
has to
like-
go to
not like we're
council.
a power under ourselves here. The city council can veto that. I think it takes a 2/3 vote, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
For the council.
Yes.
Yes.
To override it, but they could. So we're not setting a precedent that can't be.
And with the council, it's the same because we're changing the zoning map, taking something out of resource protection. You are just recommending to them.
Council, and that's
then
what we're
it's-
doing here.
And then it's still up to them
This
to,
is still going before the council, right?
because it's a change on the zoning map.
And I think that this type of change, we're in if you look at the list of vacant commercial properties, being flexible with our zoning to hopefully potentially encourage some type of retail or commercial entity is only going to benefit us, because that's a long list of empty.
I was surprised
commercial-
when I
commercial
made the
properties,
list out.
and do we want to eliminate the opportunity for potential growth, just because we want to, or do we want to say, you know what, we will be flexible enough as a community to make these contract changes for potential growth? And I think that's part of the decision process for all of us.
And with Mr. Dubé, he may find he rents the rear for a dwelling unit and the front for a commercial space. And they say, well, we need more space. It may be more lucrative to Mr. Dubé to then say, okay, well, so we remove a kitchen and you've got a bigger office space.
So at that point, though, if he was. to
He
do
would
that,
come
he'd
back
have
to us
Come
and-
back to amend the contract
Correct.
zone. And, I mean, I'm dating myself here, but when I was a little boy, there was nothing to see 100 people right up and down Main Street here
Right.
walk at any time. And at that time, it was all commercial through here and, other than some upstairs apartments. And
Right.
it certainly, I would understand that you'd want to maintain that zone to keep that business concentrated in the downtown area. It seems like times have changed. So, just personally, again, I'm one vote like you are. I would think that it would be appropriate to recognize reality. And, we have processes in place that make this it's the checks and balances. It's not just us on whim.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, are we making it now that it can just be carte blanche? If parking is the block, so be it, as far as,
But again, I think that's why it comes to you folks.
And that's why it's a contract, because it's on a case-by-case basis. And so we're considering not the entire downtown zone, we're considering Mr. Dubé's case, his location, the neighbors, and obviously anybody here tonight is gonna get a chance to express their concerns about this as well. So,
And if we're talking about consistency, the majority of the buildings have commercial space at the front, and they have, apartments above them. This isn't inconsistent with what we have in our downtown today.
well, in addition to that, the recently completed comprehensive plan, I was on the committee for that.
Right.
And our consultant spent a lot of time talking about mixed uses.
Yes.
And more ability to take advantage of the situation that you had. And I think this is in concert with the comprehensive plan as I remember it.
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
So that's just, we're just talking about it amongst ourselves, and what we haven't done yet is we haven't asked for questions from the audience. There's obviously a number of people here tonight that may or may not be interested in this case. Are there any questions from the audience? If so, would you please stand up and be recognized, and we'll step up here and state your name for the record and tell us what you have to think.
Hi, my name's Larry Miller. I've been an American Legion member for 29 years or so. My only question is Mr. Dubé, who I do business with frequently, is he going to be the guy that builds his house next to the airport and complains about the noise? Because the American Legion does get busy, usually in the springtime and in the fall. And sometimes when the weather's right, the doors are flung open, the windows are open, and the music's playing loud. I'm worried about noise complaints.
Could I just make a comment on that? I
Thank you, sir.
I have questions from the public all the time, whether it be kids out swimming in a pool, and when I've talked with the chief of police, and if he wants to come up and speak any further on this, it's what is reasonable expectations for that hour of the day. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's all kinds of heck going on, they have a right to complain. If it's during your normal business hours, chances are we're getting ready to have Mr. Gray open up his business in the future. That could raise some concerns, but you have to look at the reasonableness of when it is Bangor waterfront. You read in Bangor Daily News after every concert, and it just goes on, the complaints, but it's a concert venue, like you're a Legion Hall, with patrons that come in and go, you have music. I would think whatever your normal business hours are, the police are gonna look at that as a reasonable expectation that there's a business there. Is that fairly correct? Yeah. Please, sir?
Tell me I have to talk. Yeah, I think that
You
that's
wouldn't
what's
have come.
reasonable, and as Dave alluded to, you know, you're getting ready to have a music venue downtown that is gonna test some of our ordinances, I believe, when you see that start to open, so, I think this isn't a little bit new to downtown Old Town where this venue's coming in, but, we're gonna see how it goes with complaints. I guess that's the best case that we're gonna be able to do for you is see how it goes with complaints, and then it may be something that we have to come back and look at. What is the noise ordinance? What are our decibel levels? What do we wanna do for a study to see where we want that set? You know, are we gonna have to get into a situation where Bangor has they have monitors throughout Bangor, throughout Brewer that measure what that waterfront does and how much the decibels add, and you know the people that do the mixing for waterfront concerts, they have that readout right in their booth as they're watching it too. You know, and there's some concerts that, hey, let's blow this up tonight because we'll pay the fine on it, but we've got a crowd of 15,000 people and we're here to entertain. On other nights, they keep it pretty maintained and pretty level, and you know, City Hall, my understanding is that City Hall in Bangor gets a copy of that report every Monday after that concert, and then they make a decision based on that and go forward. That may be something, depending on what Waterfront is able to do down here, on what Mr. Gray's ultimate plan is to do, but that would fall in the line with what's reasonable, what's the noise coming from the Legion that night at that time. You know, I think these are some things that we're gonna probably cross for a first time in a long time, so not a great answer for you, but they'll fall down to what's reasonable.
Well, I would certainly hope that everybody will try to be reasonable and understanding and, you know, of each other, on both
I
sides.
think that's the key.
That's
I
the
think you
key.
just
I
hit it.
know
I
it
think
doesn't
it's-
always work that way.
It's
but
working with each other to see what's,
Hopefully that will work out and, okay.
And I would just add that because he is allowed the 2 units upstairs, what's to say they're not the ones that are complaining and not the downstairs person that.
Well, yeah, I think it doesn't matter who complains,
Right.
you know.
Can we have a mixed use downtown?
yes, you do.
There's apartments along the whole street
You do.
on the top floors.
We do.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have an apartment in a mixed use downtown.
That's correct.
You would have a reasonable expectation that there's going to be some noise.
Yes, right. And,
I
you know,
don't think there's
I-
any problem with apartments upstairs,
Right.
but the area we're talking about, I don't think that's a good place for residents to be. I mean, it's right at the end of the bridge. It's a four-way intersection. You got the American Legion Hall. You've got a bar across the street from them. I mean, that's no place for residents.
Well,
What is the difference between upstairs and downstairs, I
that
guess
was-
is
that's
my
my
Because,
question.
I mean, you've got people downstairs, they're living almost on the street.
No, they're in the back. And they're
actually
probably
gonna be
8
more
feet
people,
above
yeah.
the grade level.
well, Chief, I
Yeah.
don't want to make you stand up.
No,
there.
no, you're
I think
fine.
we're all
No, no,
set
no,
Unless
you're
there's some
good.
other questions.
Yeah, no, you're good. I think that realistically, those complaints can come from anywhere downtown.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the reality of it is it's not necessarily going to come from one person, Mr. Dubé's building. It may not come from his building. It may come from somebody up the road. So, or, you know, sound travels.
But if you have
Fair enough.
children in that apartment, they're gonna play on the sidewalk?
It's a
but that-
one-bedroom apartment.
Right, I mean, but that's not our decision. Like,
No,
you know,
but, I
the
mean-
person that's going to move in is going to say, okay, is it a safe place? If they have a child or they have a pet, you know, am I gonna take it to the park, which is literally right there? A lot of people who have apartments don't live across the street or right
Oh, I
beside a park.
realize that, but-
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Just
people
not a
all
good
across the
place for an
street
apartment, I
that are
don't think.
upstairs, they have no place.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any children.
I think back to,
Living
you know,
across the
back to
way.
the
Well,
question
and
is.
you don't have any restrictions on your tenants, or are there any?
No restrictions on tenants. You can't, but again, I only have one-bedroom units.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, kind of self-limits,
By design.
you know, the likely occupants, just under that. Well, obviously, we can't
Right.
foresee every potential, you know, circumstance here. You know, we're talking about adding another unit to an area to a building that already has two. So, thank you, Chief. I don't want to
Yeah,
make
no
you stand
problem.
up there.
No,
You know,
Whatever you need.
are there any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Would you recognize.
Yes, sir. My name is William Arbuckle, and I am the commander of the American Legion here in Old Town. American Legion's been in this town for 95 years. First started out in the Elks Club as meeting hall. Now it's been over here on Water Street. There has been, remorse between the two, back and forth with the businesses when it was off the wagon. And the back apartment, it's going to be a back apartment. I don't know who's going to live there. Maybe Jim's going to live there. I don't know. But there has been complaints brought before when our music was loud, when we had venues going on, or we had the hall rentals that it was too loud. They were trying to watch a Celtics game on the deck. So what's that going to arise with people renting that back apartment on that, say, back deck, if they're out there setting, and we have something going on? We have a lot going on. We rent the back hall to a lot of things. We have a lot of veterans. We do funeral services. We do a lot of things there. I mean, we can't be, always quiet from the people that we have. We try to, the best we can. We try to tell people where to park, because that's another issue of the parking. We've had the properties surveyed. We've done a lot of survey work going on. It's still going on right now, and a lot of it's in the mixed. A few of the findings that we found, we gave the city of Old Town an easement for that dry hydrant down there in the river. That's something that we have found out so far, but we're still ongoing with all this property thing, because nobody seems to know anything about where things are. So it is being worked on, and there are some things that, like, where's the parking going to be? I mean, we own all behind our building, so the back entrance between the American Legion, that's our access, that's our entrance.
Right.
Where's the entrance for next door? Is it the easement going down that we gave the city to go down there to use it for water? I mean, so there's a lot of questions. And I brought a lot of members with us that they're all opposed to it too. I mean, there's a lot of things that's gone on, and it seems like there's always an issue with what's going on at the American Legion. Like I said, we've been here for 95 years. We try to serve our veterans. They need a place to go. They need an outreach.
Yeah.
And if you put an apartment in the back and you're sitting out on your deck having a barbecue and we got an event going on, or we got a military service there, and you're going to call and complain about it. It's happened before. So I don't know what to do or where to go with this. So this is my voice on it as the commander there. I'm speaking for the people. I brought some with us that have concerns about it, and I'm sure they would want to speak their piece too.
So just to make sure we all understand, I mean, you're here, are you here opposing?
I'm here opposing it.
The application?
Yep. I don't think there should be an apartment out back. I think we need more businesses. The mills get up and running. You got number 10 coming on strong over there. It's going to draw more people into town. We've gained 140 new members last year in the American Legion. Hopefully we can draw some crowd from the mill coming up. We open at noon. A lot of times we close at 1 in the morning. So if we can get the mill crowd, I know there's a lot of veterans in that mill, we might decide to open at 8 in the morning to accommodate the night workers, like it used to be back in the day. The place used to be going strong back in the day. They'd open at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So this is things that we're thinking of too. But as far as the back, I don't think it should be an apartment. There's nothing there but river. So, I mean, not unless Jim was going to live there. I mean, that'd be a one-bedroom apartment. So we can't foresee who's going to stay there.
Well, no.
but-
So you're in opposition to adding
Absolutely.
one more residential unit to this
Absolutely. I think it should be more businesses downtown. They're up and coming. I think we need to start accommodating what's going on and draw more crowd downtown. I mean, we're the only other ones on that side of the street. So,
Well, I appreciate your opinion, and thank you for your service
Oh,
as a
well, thank
veteran.
you. You're more than welcome.
I appreciate all of your organization's efforts.
thank you. Appreciate that.
To a couple of Mr. Arbuckle's, Commander Arbuckle's points, again, it falls back to reasonable hours and reasonable sounds. What our voices here now, according to Mr. Gray, as long as the doors are closed in that building, you're not going to hear any more than what you're hearing right now from my voice. When the doors open, you're going to have the sound come out. If you have your events on the decks out there, which you're talking about easements to the city also granted you an easement to build your deck.
Absolutely.
So I think we've gone.
But the reason why is because nobody could find out who owned the property. That's why we're going on with this investigation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we lost our surveyor in the process.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But I go back to the reasonableness of the noise complaints.
Okay.
Because I have had people call me that the kids are out having a pool party and they get their boom box out there at 5 o'clock in the evening. You call the police and they're gonna say, what's wrong with this?
Yeah.
Nothing. So you have a tenant moving into to an apartment building, knowing full well that there's a bar next to it. It's kind of, some people would not want to live there, others want to be in the thick of things. So,
There is buyer beware. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there, they have to know.
Correct.
There's gonna be more complaints about this place opening up that wasn't there before, and all of a sudden having
correct.
a lot of noise, but.
Okay, well,
You have,
yes, ma'am.
My name is Louie Noyes. I am the president of the auxiliary at the Post. I lost my husband last year. And there was a call that was made to the Legion about a vehicle for a military gentleman who was coming to present me with the flag. He had to move his vehicle. They were running a little bit late. However, instead of understanding what I was going through, with just losing my husband, who was 57 years old, it was, he either moves his vehicle or it's getting towed. I never found out about this until after the fact. And thank God for the Legion being there, because without them, I couldn't have done it. Point blank, my husband served this country, and he could not. I had no help, period, none at all. And if it wasn't for the American Legion, my husband would not have been taken care of in the proper way that he should have been taken care of. And I am very thankful to have them there. I bartend there on Fridays and Saturdays now. We do have a lot of functions. And on one particular night that I was bartending last summer, the police were called at 8:30 at night. 8:30 at night, because the side door was open, we were being too loud. It was very hot in there. Our air conditioning was not working at the time. So we were trying to get a cross breeze going across. We did not mean to disturb anybody. Everybody was having fun. So the police had been called. We wound up shutting the door so that they could, have their piece over on the deck. Off the wagon was still open at the time. I believe they were watching a game or something out on the deck. However, they could have just called us and said, hey, you're being loud. Is there any way maybe we can come to a conclusion to this without bothering anybody? But that didn't happen, so. And personally, I oppose it. I feel that it's going to affect the times that we're going to be in operation. Friday and Saturday nights are very busy. We have a lot of veterans coming up. We even have people coming up from Damascotta. We have people coming down from Millinocket, because a lot of these other clubs do not have a bar-type atmosphere where somebody can come in, relax, have a drink, cruise through downtown, go into the shops or whatever. And I think that's what draws people to Old Town, is our uniqueness. And the way that everybody is just so friendly and caring for one another. I would feel awful if the person who lives downstairs, let's say it's an elderly couple, and we're making too much noise for them. We are a club. We hold a lot of functions. And that's my concern. So I am opposed as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Jose Whitmore. I am also a member of the American Legion, second generation, and we have a third generation back there as well. And my concern is, along with what Louis was saying, is the noise. Normal hours, normal operating hours. Around midnight is still our normal operating hours. And to get told that you have to quiet down at midnight really doesn't sound fair.
If I can ask the question, maybe Mr. Arbuckle is the one. How many complaints have you received from that building?
Well, actually, we received a few complaints from him, and I had watched the last couple interviews when you guys had a city council meeting that the police were always called to our establishment for this and for that, which is totally wrong. I mean, Chief Wilcox, if he wanted to pull up the records, he could find out how many times the police was called to the American Legion. There's been incidents that they've been called for people falling off the back railing into the river, and the rescue squads were down. I think that was a comment that Mr. Dubé made at one of the other meetings, that they had the rescue units down there and everything else for the Legion. It wasn't for the Legion, it was for Off the Wagon. I mean, we've had the officers down there a few times. It's gone back and forth with the parking issue. It's always who owns what. Stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. Well, where's your side, where's my side? That's why we started to hire a surveyor to get this taken care of. And we found a lot of things, like, you know, I'll throw this out. We found that he only owns 2 feet from the corner of his building, so where's his parking along the side? You might think it's funny, Jim, but I have the records of it. But that's okay. I mean, I'm not here for a great match about who owns what, who does this, who does that, you know, obviously. All I'm saying is, you know, we're the veterans here in this town, too, and we've been here a long time, and we don't need to be strong-armed by somebody else. We've been here a while,
Okay,
you know.
you do understand that this proceeding tonight
No, I understand.
has nothing to do with the.
No,
with
I
the
understand
American
that, I
Legion.
understand that.
It has to do with
I understand
Mr.
that, but
Doobie's
you asked a
request.
question about where I come up with this, how many times the officers were called.
Okay.
So is this gonna be the same thing when there's an apartment out back? Are they gonna be called 100 times because we might be a little too loud? We might have a bigger crowd than normal to accommodate the people that are living there? I don't know. This is something that I guess, if it passes, we'll have to see, I guess. But as far as the officers being called to American Legion, I can recall probably a couple times at the most. Parking issue, and one time it was for the noise complaint at 8 o'clock that Louis had mentioned, because they were trying to watch the
So
Celtics game
it's
on the
not
back.
it's not a very common event, then, would you say,
What's that?
that there are complaints?
It's not all the time, no.
No.
But it got to be quite often, especially with the parking issue, with who was parking where. I mean, we've had vehicles parked. We can't tell people that come to the American Legion where to park. They pull around the building, they park on either side, or they park out front. We only have limited parking, obviously. So they might park on the side that Jim owns. Okay, so it doesn't mean that they are the American Legion people parking there. They could be parking there going over to Yarmouth to get something to eat, which have been many a times, but we've got the phone calls saying it was American Legion people parking there.
Okay.
And it's not that. We have signs up just like they have signs up.
Okay. Well,
So
I-
that's,
excuse me.
yeah, it's only been a few
Yeah.
times that we've had to deal with it with the officers.
Okay.
And there's been a few times they've come down and said, we don't see anything wrong.
Okay.
So,
Well,
I mean,
I just asked the question, and
Yep.
I'm sorry I
Nope,
interrupted
that's
you.
fine, that's fine.
Do you have anything else you want to
Yeah,
tell us?
I mean, if it was myself, I wouldn't want to be in a back apartment like that. I mean, right next to the river. I mean, there's a real steep drop off right off the edge of the parking lot. I really don't think it's a place for a residential,
Well, there's 2 units there already.
yeah,
Okay. So,
yeah.
Okay, all right, so you're in that position then? and-
Yes.
and I understand your concern that this is a little bit different for the typical application.
Yeah.
You know, we're not, obviously, the application doesn't have anything to do with the American Legion.
Right, and I understand that.
We're certainly glad,
Yeah.
yeah, personally, I'm glad you're there, and I'm a veteran myself, so that certainly, want to make sure there's no aspersions cast at all towards the American Legion that we're considering Mr. Dubé's request.
Right.
But you have every right to express your opposition to it.
Yep.
And thank you for doing
I
that.
just hate to see somebody get in there and just in the middle of the night, like during our normal working hours, just be kept awake.
Understood. Understood.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there any other comments that, from the audience? I want to make sure everybody has their chance. Mr. Dubé.
I'd just like to throw a few facts out that I've owned that building since '93, and some of these people may have been in the Legion that time, some have not, but over the years, from '93 up till about a year and a half ago, we had a great working relationship. I've redone the driveway down through the middle 3 times during that time period, and I've done it across the back twice during that period, at my expense because of veterans, okay? Some here want to believe that I'm a veteran hater, but I'm not. I also, when I took over the place a few years ago after the tenant moved out, I donated a bunch of stuff to the Legion. I donate some stuff to the VFW. I'm not anti-veteran, okay? But there is such a thing as you have property, you pay taxes on it, you have people that you want to park on your property and people that you don't. They're the same way. They told you about all the bad things we supposedly did, okay? But there's been people on our property, numerous times. Only been a problem for the last year and a half because before, a long time ago, we used to work back and forth together. If they had a certain function, we used to let them park out back, okay? But some of our people got harassed for parking over there too, or driving out back there and different things. In the last year and a half, it got crazy. Before that, there was a lot of times the 2 buildings coexist since I've owned them. But the last year and a half has been a little rough. There's been some going back and forth between the 2. I'm not here to hide that, but I'm not anti-veteran whatsoever.
Okay, well, it's also not appropriate for the planning board to get in the middle of this.
And I just wanted
We're
to
considering-
state the facts too.
However, I mean, let's look at it. You don't have to sit up there, but let's just say that the American Legion wanted to, or you wanted to have a chicken coop out back. Well, there's zoning that says downtown, that would cause some problems for the neighbors. This is kind of an automatic thing. The normal course of the operation of the American Legion is something they've been doing, as I said, for 95 years. You've been there since '93, okay, and your tenants presumably are going to notice that there's an American Legion next door when they rent your apartment. So that's about the only thing that's relevant here. Is at least in my view, anyone else can feel free to bail me out here, because we certainly aren't here to adjudicate relations between neighbors. We're here to and this is a contract zone, so it's a little different. If we had the zoning book to go by, I mean, it'd be easy, okay? Setbacks here, and a number of parking lots here, and all of that. But this is a little bit nebulous because of that. So all we're considering here tonight is whether or not we enter into a contract zone to allow one more additional dwelling unit where there's already 2. That's what we're here doing.
Correct.
Okay, are there any other comments based on that from the audience or from Chief? Or
If I could?
Yes, ma'am.
Standing.
Sure, go ahead.
We already have a lot of apartments that are vacant in Old Town, especially on Main Street. He's got a couple right here that aren't rented. Why would we want to put another one when we could let's hold off and let's wait. Let's see what the mill that's just coming back can do for us. And then revisit it maybe later on. Give it a little time. Old Town's coming back. Let's give it a chance. We've got enough vacant apartments in this area. And there's no need of it. He's got a couple on this main street right here that he said himself, has not been rented yet.
Those aren't residential, they're first floor commercial.
Right, but the apartments upstairs aren't rented.
Yes, they are. I believe they're the same tenants that moved in originally.
Okay.
Well,
That's
thank you.
my concern.
Well, thank you for expressing your concern. That's
Thank you.
why you're here, and that's why we have these meetings, so
Could
we
I
can.
ask Mr. Doobie a question? Any prospective tenant, would you let them know before they rented that might be a problem with noise next door, and if they're moving in there, they're gonna have to accept it?
You have to tell them. I mean, they're gonna live there. You
Well,
what
I know
mean?
that, but
You know, I'm
if
gonna
they're
tell
new
the
to
upstairs
town,
tenants that.
if they're new to town, are you gonna let them know?
I'm gonna tell them if they rent the upstairs apartment, it's the same thing. I mean, you know, what sense would it make to sign a lease with somebody, and the next night they call me and say,
I'm done.
I'm done? You know what I mean? If it's-
Well, because they've signed a lease and then they're entitled.
That's right.
Then they're responsible
They're
for
locked
the
in.
next 11 months. So that's why.
Can you ask the chief whether he's had, what his complaint history is with the two properties?
What's the history?
I think you should have brought your helmet.
That is done.
I would not, at this point, throw out numbers, because I don't want to be misquoted on, certainly in this atmosphere, as to the number of times that either place, but both Mr. Dubé and both the Legion are very upfront with you tonight as to what the relationship has been like over the last year and a half. They have painted that picture for you. So I would confirm that's what that's what the picture looks like. But the number of times that we've been there, I would not dare throw a number out. I wouldn't dare say who was the complainant on this or that without actually looking at it and presenting it to you, because I don't.
Say it's abnormal?
I would say that it certainly, in my own opinion, it's a personality problem, back and forth. It appears that there's some personalities that clash. I don't know that that's abnormal to anything that I do in my world, but I would just say that, you know, it's, for whatever reason, it's become a personality, it's become a clash. That's it. You know, I think that both sides run a good business. They just have a problem over parking and driveways. That's what I would say. They both have been really good businesses for us.
Do you think now that they're not competing businesses, that
Speculation.
It's not competing, it's about, we were getting the phone calls, you know, when they stopped going the place, then we would get phone calls from James and the other bartender. So that just kept going on and going on. We would run out, try to move the cars real quick before we had 15 minutes to have them moved or they were gonna be towed. So that was going on there. But our biggest, if we were getting complaints at 8:30 on a Friday night in a business district from another, and I hate to call it a bar, but it's a bar. Like ours, we tend to call it a canteen. It's our post. It's our veterans post. If you're getting phone calls on at 8:30 from another bar, what's that gonna do when a resident comes in there? If they're already calling at 8:30 on a Friday night, it's just gonna continue.
there are going to be two apartments upstairs in that building
Right, but,
without this board doing anything about that?
But
Aren't
that's
there
been okay.
apartments facing Water Street or the back of apartments facing Water Street now?
Yes.
Yes, one is.
Yes.
Yeah.
and we've never gotten complaints from any of them.
So there's more than just two, there's multiple.
Oh, yes,
apartments.
all
Yes.
along.
It's all along. yeah.
Okay, well,
On the Main Street
Okay.
here, yes.
I think the board here has a real good picture of what's going on there, which we did not know. So we thank you for coming here and the chief for explaining this to us. So I think we understand it. I would hazard an opinion, just as a member of the board here, that the planning board is not in the personality business, but maybe the police department is.
Correct.
And that we should best stick to nuts and bolts zoning ordinances before we get ourselves in trouble.
I would.
Thank you, sir.
Good
Thank you.
advice.
Thank you for helping us out there. So with that in mind, you know, and understanding the concerns that everybody has, and everybody's had a chance to say their piece and answer back, and so now I would like to basically just discuss this amongst the board, and then we're gonna have to do something.
Right.
This is unusual, certainly, for the board. We've had a few chair throwing events. I don't think that's gonna happen, but, you know, this is different. uh,
It's not Juniper Ridge.
yeah, it's not Juniper Ridge. So
Okay.
we are not.
All on video. so
There's
hey,
nothing
we're
in the
good.
zoning ordinances that guides us on personalities, and there's
It's
already
irrelevant.
2 units there. We are all free as members. I'm just the master of ceremonies to either make a statement or vote a particular way.
And as we make a decision, we need to consider what's there currently.
Right.
And are we being consistent on behalf of the city? Because that's part of our responsibility as well, if we think of the mixed use in that area.
Yeah, well, there is clearly mixed use in the downtown. It's a
Yep.
small area, and
Yep.
there are events going on, and there's gonna be more if, down the street, if they open up again, and hopefully they do. If someone buys the Boom House, I mean, I don't know if they ever had any noise complaints, but they certainly had a good crowd while they were open. I
They
certainly
did.
hope somebody else moves in there. Any prospect to that, by the way?
Not that I know, I hear rumors,
Let's stay
but,
on topic.
yeah.
I like that, basically.
It's a great place.
So anyway, with that in mind,
I have a quick question.
yes, sir.
Does this change any requirements as far as parking? Like, he has to meet whatever requirements there will be for so many
For
apartments.
that zoning district,
Yeah.
yes, and it's 2 per apartment.
Right.
And see, what we're doing is we're entering into a contract zone for an
Mhm.
R2, which has parking requirements
Yep.
that
Yes.
he is required to meet, and he has met them.
Okay.
So we're not fiddling with the ordinance at all. We're
Mhm.
changing the zone for that,
The
you know.
the
for that
parking
use.
requirements for the 3 units is far less than it was
Yep.
for the bar.
Okay, so he has the parking right now in spades,
Yeah.
more than enough.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, I mean, again, not entering into the personalities, I understand everybody's concerns, but I think we have to look at it on a very factual basis. That's my opinion. You are free to have your own, and express it here if you wish. And if we are all done doing that, then I would entertain a motion, regarding this application.
Can I ask through you to Tim? Tim, at one point in the past, you had indicated that the LLC had discussed downtown on that regard. Did you, didn't you?
I think we just discussed the Main Street problem.
Oh, just the main, okay.
Excuse me.
Well, to move this ahead, I would,
Well, I just, for the record, I agree with Jim in that it's your property, you should be able to do with it what you want. To Glenda's point, we need to balance between
Yep.
the individual and the city. So that being said, I agree with Jim in that it's yours, you should be able to do with it what you want.
Through the proper,
Through the proper channels, which
Well,
you've done,
And
and
there's,
so.
and the other point to add to that is that in this application tonight, the people who have come here to oppose this change are not opposing anything, I've heard no evidence that they're opposing anything that the applicant's tenants are gonna cause them. It's that they're gonna cause to the applicant. I mean, it's.
Understood.
You know, if they were gonna have a chicken coop out there, they'd have something to complain about, or
Right.
or something that was going to affect their business. This is reversed, and I don't think we can appropriately do that as a planning board.
Understood.
I think the chief bailed me out there when he said we should, he's in the
Thanks, Chief.
personality business, we're in the
Right.
zoning business, and we
Zone.
should stick
Well,
to
it's
that.
just like Juniper Ridge. It was facts.
Yeah.
That's what we have to deal with, so.
So, with that in mind, Kim?
well, I do think the highest and best use of this property is a commercial venture. However, we have so many other commercial properties that a
Understood.
person has a right to earn an economic.
What's one
Return.
more residential
And that
where
whole
there's
area
already
is
two?
residential. You go on the other side
Yeah.
of
Right.
Yep.
the street and there's apartments, two
As-
apartment houses and.
And we have the say in all the other properties that may come forward. So as long as we have we can keep downtown as commercial as best we can, and, so.
So I make a motion to recommend the contract zone change to the Old Town City Council for adoption as specified in the document.
I second.
We have motion and a second. And I would like to add as part of the further discussion that this is in no way casting any aspersions towards the American Legion.
Right.
We are proud of you. We're proud of all the veterans, and we certainly understand your concerns. But we have to look at things as property owners. We have a reputation as a board of bending over backwards to let property owners do with their property what they want, so long as they're not hurting the neighbors. And no one has said that this is gonna hurt the neighbors. At least I haven't heard that yet tonight. So if hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion? And opposed?
Opposed.
We have one opposed. The motion carries. Thank you very much for your understanding, and I certainly hope that you can resolve your differences. We all have them, and I hope you can do that peacefully and okay, so we're, but yeah, this is all about property rights, and that's what we're here for. Thank you very much.
We'll just see what happens down the road.
Can we take a 2-minute recess? I gotta go get water.
Yeah.
Gagging over here.
Thank you, Chief.
Hey, no problem.
Okay, well, that was a little different. I've been on the planning board for a long time, and that was that was a little different. But we certainly I hope we did the right thing.
Welcome to planning board.
Only
Charles. I think last time you this is your first
This is-
official meeting, right?
No worries.
That's it, yeah, it never had it where somebody opposed an applicant based on what they might do to them. You know, so, but anyway.
You know what? That's why the police.
But, you know,
their
certainly,
jobs,
I
right?
certainly, you
And
know,
that's why you have a planning board, right?
well, yeah, I didn't think we, never got quite into something like this, but,
Something new.
it was fun.
Keeping
So-
it fresh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dubé. Thank you for coming and your understanding.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good luck. Okay, well,
Nothing.
you're all alone.
It's all done.
Okay, see, now we're feeling brave. We can gang up on you now, so. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. He represents
That's all I have to
the,
say.
the Border Patrol.
Hope they
No,
work it
maybe we'll be good, so. Okay, well, we are in a short recess, so if you can just hang tight for a minute, we'll get to you here right off, and,
Yeah.
We were talking about the
guy.
little
Oh,
girl.
Jesus.
See that
a little
you-
bit of theater.
Oh, yeah. It was just spitting at me, throwing cups at
program.
me.
2-year degree.
I'm not a voting member, I'm just here.
I
And you
thought
got
we
the
might.
brunt of the
There was
paper.
commitment. Teaching me.
Okay.
Okay,
Understand.
Good.
Yep, that's great.
everybody,
Did you bring a drink for all of us? Some water?
There's water in the fridge if you all want, like,
I was
Oh, we
kidding.
don't want water.
I'm holding out for coffee.
Whatever Sandra said.
yeah.
At least, hopefully.
Well,
Okay.
all right. We'll get back to officialness here.
Okay.
Item 4 is a site plan application for the City of Old Town to construct a 6,500 square foot office and hangar for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Air and Marine Facility adjacent to the terminal building, tax map 5, lot 3, case number 1540. And I understand you're here to represent
Yes.
this application, is that correct? Could you-
I'm working with Lance.
Could
If you wanna-
Could you
you can
just
even
tell us
sit
your
right at the
name and all
table
that?
there.
Yeah, we gotta do it, you gotta
Can we do this
be
official?
official, at least to start with. Yeah,
Yeah, so
sure.
I'm Shane McDougall, and I'm with ABS Engineering, and I've been working with Lance and Bill on this project, and Dave.
So,
So do you have any direct relationship with the Border Patrol?
no, no.
So but you have designed this building and,
Yeah, more or less. Yep.
okay.
Shane has been in the airport engineering field for a long time now.
Yep.
And we contracted Shane to work out this site plan for us and some details for the building construction of the hangar. We're working with Layton, Bob Layton was the winning bid on the contract. We have secured a bond for the construction of this. The city's actually going to own this facility. Right now, we have an 18-year lease with an additional 5-year at the end of that, and then who knows where it goes from there. I don't think any of us will need to worry about 23 years down the road, but
So this facility then, what you're indicating is that this facility may well expand in the future? Or?
I know there's been, right now it's just for one helicopter, but there may at some point in time be an addition to it for a fixed-wing aircraft. Personnel is going to be around 5 people.
Yeah.
And then there'll be obviously different law enforcement agencies that utilize it. What they're going to do, we're reworking the parking lot for the terminal building. So the access will be actually on impervious surface right now and then go around to the secured area, which will be fenced in on probably 2 or 3 sides.
Yeah, well, you'll just fence in that, you'll have a land side and air side. It'll be a secure facility. We need to get with the CBP's folks. They've got security contractors that they'll come in and provide that, so.
So they're gonna have on-site security then?
Well, they won't, not on-site security, but they'll set up security cameras, access, control, that sort of stuff.
It's a
Yeah.
federal facility. It'll be,
I mean, right now, they currently are in Holton, and they've got a staff of 3 to 5. They've got 1 helicopter, an AS-350. At one point at Holton, they had, I think, over 12 pilots. They now only have 1. They're looking to relocate, centralize their operations in Maine because they operate into Jackman, Holton, and that whole northern border, and I think they even help the Coast Guard out a little bit, too. So, there was some indication when we first started discussing with CBP and GSA that there may be some expansion there, but who knows when. In addition to this project, they're going to need Jet A fuel, which the airport currently does not have. And so as part of this project, we're installing an 8,000-gallon fuel farm at the airports. So
the one aircraft that they have slated for it at this point in time use around 19,000 gallons of Jet A
And
year.
what type of aircraft is that?
it's an AS-350 helicopter.
So is that like is that an annual consumption, fuel consumption that you're talking about, or?
Yeah,
Roughly
about 19 or 20,000,
19,000,
yeah.
which there's money to be made on that, definitely, by the city. The lease is definitely paid for by the annual payments, and then a little bit, but the fuel sales is where we will make.
Good.
So the
Nice
city
return.
is gonna provide the Jet A and sell it to the
Yes.
Border
Correct.
Patrol?
Just like we do with the avgas out there now.
And that will all run through EPA and all that process.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think we'll be addressing that in the findings of fact, I
Yeah.
believe. Okay, so initially then, this is purely an aviation, which it's appropriate for the lots that we've
Absolutely.
got out there. It's an aviation use. And then future expansion, I guess my only concern is if there's a future expansion to a more, say like a more administrative function, is that something that we would review again if that came back to us? Well, it would under site plan
Well, it's
review.
gonna be at least 18 years from now, so
18 years?
they have an 18-year lease.
Oh.
With an option to add to that.
Well, yeah, but within that timeframe.
Oh, it'll be Border Patrol. There will always be some kind of aircraft there.
Okay, so,
And if you look at your plan, right now, you can see the size of the building. The laydown area will still be area that they can utilize, so if they ever needed to expand on the building footprint, you have plenty of room there to work with.
Yeah, there's a whole nother lot that was already developed, or already permitted to the west.
Lot 5.
Lot 5, it's called. We actually are staying within, a parcel that was, there was 2 permits, 2 phases to the permit when they did that whole airport development. The lot that it's gonna sit on and Lot 1, if you're familiar with that business park, Lot 1 is the first one on the left as you come in. And then there's lots 1A, which is across the road, lots 2, 3, and 4 that kind of work their way up, and 5 that work their way
2,
up.
3, and 4 have been, Gary Sullivan has 3 and 4, and
Right.
Mickey Carmichael has 2.
So there's a lot 5, that's again to the west, and that's a couple of acres. I want to say that's 3 1/4 or 3.5 acres.
Good sized parcel.
So there's plenty of room to expand there. There's also room to expand between that building and the terminal
And the
building if
terminal.
needed.
Okay, well, I guess, you know, if the use is primarily aviation,
Yes.
then, you know, as it should be in the airport, that area was created for airport-type related businesses, if possible. Obviously, we got some others that aren't, but, I guess my only
They fit into the I-2. because-
my only question would be that, yeah, you know, if the Border Patrol wanted to change that to a different use, would we have any input into it?
Yes, yeah, it would have to come back.
You know,
But their primary goal is Border Patrol.
right.
Because again, we joked earlier about act of Congress. It takes an act of Congress to get things,
Well, to get to this point, yeah, so, you know, I guess, you know, it just wanted to know if we had an opportunity to address this again in the future.
Yep.
If, for instance, they wanted to create a
it would be a change of use, so
a
yes, it
detention
would come.
facility or something there.
Yeah, yes,
then
it would
we'd
definitely
like to
come
know
back.
about it, I would think, and we'd
Yep.
like to have we'd like to understand what it is they wanted to do.
Yeah, that's
So-
a whole change of use.
So I would, you know, I'd like to codify that this is primarily an aviation use and Border Patrol
Yes.
use, and that if there was a change of use or in addition to that function, I guess we'd like to have the opportunity to talk about it.
As you always do with every other project, yes.
Oh, yeah, well, this is a little different, so,
No, there's no different.
okay, all right.
It's no different. As long as I'm here, it's no different. If it-
Okay.
I got an odd question. I agree with this 100%, but I see it says proposed gate and fence, exact location to be field located. Is there a heightened sense of security out there at this point with a facility like this? Does that change the dynamic of the security level at our airport? I know that
It will be within their confines.
it's in their confine, but does that do anything around the property? I know there's a runway there, but down back here with a Lot 5 that you mentioned and such, will there be some sort of a security fence in that area?
On the inland side, the land side, I'm sure that'll all be secure.
Yeah, currently, right now, the airport is got a full perimeter fence on it, and it's,
Right, okay.
mainly it's a wildlife fence, not really a security
Yeah,
fence.
yeah.
But if you, their Holton operations very loose when it comes to
Yeah.
the gates wide open.
Yeah.
And this is a different, if this was, I was involved in a project on a actual border station and much different security measures and interest. This is rather low key when it comes to
Right.
CBP and whatnot. They want to make sure that they have access or control to their facility, and that's really the primary reason for that gate. This road, I see in the future, is extending to access the
Right.
rest of Lot 5. So that gate is not really necessarily located correctly on this plan. These were very preliminary,
Oh, sure. Yeah,
more prescriptive plans. We're actually going to get their input on
right.
where they want the
It's
fences, where
almost
they
a-
want their gates.
I mean, I
As
realize
it's
this
built
heightened
out, they'll-
security, I just didn't know if we needed to exercise some more strength and security to our terminal building and such. I mean, we don't have commercial flights per se, but we do have the private flights, and I just didn't want to restrict to the hangars that people have for private.
No.
Okay.
So like on the, for example, on the operations side, on the air side,
Yeah.
their apron is gonna be open. I mean, and eventually in front of that apron, the airport layout plan has more apron expansion, so GA will be able to access in front of their, and if there was an issue with
Yeah,
that,
and,
it
and
would.
clearly, I mean, if somebody in a Cessna, pulls up to the front of your office, obviously somebody's going to be there to go, hey, what's up, right?
Yeah.
So, so it's not an issue.
No, I just thought I'd ask the question, because
Sure.
I think it's a great
Yeah.
idea. I just was trying to figure out, yep.
Okay. Well, I fully understand it. I was just
Yep.
asking about, I perfectly, I mean, this is perfect fit for the DeWitt Field in Old Town. So we're,
Yeah, great opportunity.
yeah, for the aviation function and all of that. So, I was just making sure I understood, what we were talking about. So with that in mind, if there are no other questions of the applicant right here, we can just kind of go down through the findings of fact, and without objection, I'll read down through them all, ask for a vote on that, and then we can move on to the application itself. Number one is the utilization of the site, and as we've already stated, the Border Patrol will be using this for an aviation-related function. They'll have a terminal building, a hangar, and a hangar, right? There's a hangar in there too?
Yeah, yeah, the
Okay,
front part's.
and then offices to support that. Okay. Traffic access and parking has already been discussed. It's using the existing airport road and the curb cuts. We've already talked about the accessibility. There'll be no restrictions on the apron outside of your site, okay, for general aviation. And staff parking will be in the existing terminal parking area. The gate is there, and right now, probably the way it's gonna work is it'll be open most of the time, but that could be locked if it needed to be.
That'll be like a key carded gate, I'm sure it will be.
Okay, so it will be a closed
Similar
gate.
to what the airport already has.
A controlled access.
Yes,
They actually have 5 spaces on
yes.
their site, and any overflow, they'll be able to utilize the terminal parking area.
Okay. You don't think that there would ever be any impact on the public's use or general aviation's use?
There's very few times.
Yeah, I know, I've
when-
never seen
When
that
you have the
parking lot full.
fly-ins, you get a lot of parking there, but
They're
for-
actually creating more parking on that,
for,
the parking lot that's there is very underutilized in how it's
Yeah,
striped.
yeah, I would say that would be understating
Restriking
it. Yeah, there's not a lot going out there most of the time. Okay, and pedestrian circulation, will follow the sidewalks and obviously within the site to your own uses. Stormwater management. Okay, so it's, there is a stormwater plan, and this, I'm assuming this fits into the stormwater plan for that area?
if you read the suggested findings, it tells you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of restating what it obviously says here. I'm not going to read through everything here, unless you think that's what I should be doing.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, erosion control, and you're going to utilize all appropriate BMPs, best management practices, to prevent erosion and siltation of nearby water supplies. The water supply is city water, right?
Yes.
Okay, and sewage is city sewage.
Yes.
And you'll be connected to that. Utilities are from the existing lines. The landscaping out there, obviously, it'll, what's used will be used, and what's not will be natural.
Will be grass and natural.
Okay, and, but we'd probably be totally against palm trees, so,
How
Tell
about
the contractor
redwoods?
that one.
well, maybe not. Maybe we would.
Think you can stop that order?
As far as water quality protection, we are assuming that, that obviously, the hangar area will have floor drains and control measures to protect, you know, the water supply or any water bodies from any fuel that might leak.
So the hangar will have evaporative trench drains. The DEP frowns on regular drains, floor drains, so we always try to just don't even go down that road because they'll question it. You have to put in a water separator. You guys
Yeah,
have
it
seen all
gets-
that. So we just put evaporative trench drains and that usually
And
solves it.
that's gonna be, obviously, there's something seriously wrong if you're dumping fuel out on the tarmac out there, so.
And that had a site law permit back when, that was with the
Yep,
original.
2005, 2006, as well as SPCC and a SWIP plans. Those will all get taken into account.
Number 12, on hazardous, special, and radioactive materials, it states here that there will be no hazardous, special, or radioactive materials generated through the course of construction or normal operations at that site.
Yep, as far as we're aware, there's nothing there.
Okay. And there's no shoreland zone within this site. The capacity of the applicant is the Congress,
So that's
the
questionable.
government. So I think we're all set on that. Solid waste management is going to be taken care of by dumpsters, and you'll have contractors to take care of that, I'm sure. There's no known historical significance to this site. It's been a part of a working airport since before World War II, so I think we're good on that. Floodplain management, this is not within a floodplain, unless that mountain over there in the Maldives collapses and we have a giant tsunami, it probably won't be part of a floodplain. Exterior lighting, there's lighting fixtures and cutoff and style downward. Yes, I can't imagine any adjacent landowners that would be concerned with any lights that you would have out there.
Yep, They just have to meet the guidelines, so it's not affecting the airport operations.
Right, so the downward cast, and obviously as an aviation facility, you'll be just as concerned with that as others, so. Screening will be provided by natural vegetation and security fencing, and you aren't gonna have any outdoor sales. No yard sales for used, Border Patrol uniforms or something, okay, so, all right, so the findings of fact, does anybody have any questions regarding findings of fact? Okay, hearing none, I would, do you have anything else you wanna tell us? Okay, there's nobody in the audience this time that is worried about what they might do to you, so.
I've seen worse.
So, okay, so,
Yes.
with that, would you like to make a motion? Your first one, right?
I guess, I don't know the official
Well,
verbiage.
it's fairly easy. Okay,
Help them out.
it's right there.
All right. I motion to approve site plan application for construction of a 6,500 square foot building with associated improvements for the city of Old Town.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? And none opposed, and welcome. So please pass that on to the board.
Thanks, Shane.
Great, yeah.
So we're glad to have you, and we wish you well.
They should be breaking ground anytime, so.
Great.
The excavator's sitting out there right now. They called the other day, Scott, can we start? I said, "Hey, can you wait one more day? We're gonna have a meeting Tuesday night.
Yeah, building should be delivered in another 6 weeks or so, so.
It's going to be fast-tracked again with the hoops you have to jump through, and they've held things up. The building has been ordered a month, at least.
I do have a quick Border Patrol story. I had a logging job up next near to the New Brunswick border here a couple of winters ago. And I drove in on the logging road, private logging road, and I get in there about a mile, and here's this Border Patrol truck. And it's parked there, and the guy's in it. I thought, well, this is unusual, you know, and so I stopped, and I get out, and I introduced myself, and I said, I'm the forester for the landowner here. Is everything okay? And He said, well, yes, I'm just doing routine patrol and, just making sure that, I know where this road goes. I said, well, your secret is safe with me, sir, and thank you for your service.
Couldn't admit he was lost.
No, he was just goofing off.
New business. Next month, we will be doing, the Highbargers are gonna make another split on that property we did the subdivision for along the Stillwater. The big lot on Spring Street,
Oh, yeah.
they're gonna pull us another section of that out of resource protection and split that one where it was part of a subdivision. I talked with Russ about this, and they need to come back to you just for an amendment. So it's gonna be just a pretty cut and dry, you're gonna get one sheet that shows
Okay.
that parcel and.
So
Okay.
we probably will have a meeting.
Shane, thank
Good
you, I'll
night.
call you tomorrow.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. So. Another item, I went down to get checks cut for you people,
Checks cut.
for your service. And then I was hit up with, well, what's the bylaws say? Well, it says you can't, but we're changing that. So that'll have to go to council, and then I can cut your checks
Holy smokes.
for,
I picked
that I've
the
been
right time to
promising you
start.
now for a year.
Can we make it retroactive? I've been on the board for about 25 years. Probably not. Okay.
Other than that, do you want to discuss?
I have a question. Should we, at this point, start looking at the zones and stuff we do have? Because we had the comprehensive plan like Ted referred to, and then that was kind of it. And then we've been getting lately a lot of these contract zones. Should we be looking at that and
Yep.
saying, okay, what makes sense in these zones? Should we rework some of these? Should
Come
we-
fall, we start doing some
Well, in fact,
workshops.
just
in the
asking
comprehensive
because-
plan, that process was encouraged.
Correct, and we haven't done that, and so we're getting these, and I was looking in the ordinances, and I remember we went through the process about having what's called a contract zone. And I didn't see it listed in there as a term that I could find.
In the
And I
zoning
prob-
ordinance?
I didn't see it. Now, that doesn't mean it's not there, but I didn't happen to see it.
It's,
Yeah, and the only
it
reason I ask
hasn't,
is.
the clerk takes care of all the
Okay.
changes that we make. That all went approved through you and then approved through the
Correct.
council.
Correct.
A new book is not.
Well, it was just my.
None of the changes that we've made since I've been here.
Right.
Are
reflected. But I remember, I was on the planning board years ago for a short period of time, and at that point, it was taboo to do spot zoning. So spot zoning at that time was these isolated zones. And so when contract zoning came, it was my understanding contract zoning meant that we could make a change for a property owner such as Jim Dubé. But if Jim were to sell that property in the future, the zone went back to what it was by contract. And so.
That goes with their signs
And
or
so it's
heirs.
attached to it, is what I'm understanding now. but
Attached
at
to
the
the
time, I
deed.
didn't realize that.
Yes.
So to me, that needs to be clarified, because that is truly spot zoning, and I don't know what the current phraseology is between the two, if there
You-
is a difference.
You all approved the language that we wrote.
Correct, but again, I
And
didn't
if you,
find
if you
it.
look at the contract itself, it does, it mentions that,
Correct.
or it clarifies that. The conditions, terms, and duties and obligations of this contract shall run with the land. All future real estate conveyances by deed shall contain a reference to this contract.
Correct.
Contract shall ensure the benefit of the owners, its successors, or assigns.
But then you made a comment tonight during the deliberation that would indicate that if he were to sell it, then we could take it back.
No.
No.
Well, I thought that I understood.
No,
that-
if he wanted to change it to commercial, he'd have to come back to nullify this
Or
contract.
any other use.
Right.
And the check and the balance is that,
Correct.
first off, we have to comply, we can change it to a different zone, but we have to comply with the conditions of that zone, like
Okay.
in this case in R2.
Okay,
And the council has to approve it.
correct.
So I know when we first talked about this, I said, well, this is spot zoning.
And It truly is, but it's,
But it's
Totally legal.
it's by contract. Spot zoning,
is when
because
you just-
because it's very specific to this property and it's under a contract where we have very specific. I guess that's the
If you were-
distinction we made when we had that discussion.
If you were to look at our zoning maps, right now, zones have different colors.
Correct.
When you look at it, when we've approved a contract zone, right on the zoning map, it says limited R2. So that means it's a contract zone.
Right.
For that parcel.
But when you read down through, for instance, I did, because I was thinking about this whole situation, and it very specifically said, Water Street, South Main, and Main Street up to certain points, including elderly housing, it was exempted. Well, one of the elderly housing units right now, or both of them, are mixed use. You don't have to be elderly to be in there. You have to be Section 8, okay, for instance. So that's different a little bit, because the nature of that is
Down here?
different. Yeah. If you live in Marsh Island, you do not have to be elderly, you have to be Section 8. And so then, if you look at that, and then there was somewhere else, I remember in the past, you had to be within, you could not have a bar within 1,000 feet of a church. Remember, we've got a couple that I know have been approved lately, but I remember you and I had a private discussion, and I won't give the names and personalities, but I questioned about a particular property that is available right now that's within 1,000 feet of a church, but you mentioned it was a leased church. So the difference in the use of something that's leased
But
as
the
opposed to
the
be what it.
church came after.
Correct.
Churches can go wherever they want,
Correct, but the property that's in question that's for sale,
but it's always been that use.
okay. But I guess that's where if it was black and white, it would be easier for me to.
Well, it'd be easier. Certainly, we
it
didn't
was
expect to
bla-
get into personalities and
Correct.
neighborly
Correct.
disputes here tonight. I think we successfully avoided getting sucked into it too much. but-
Well, we may have struck the iceberg, I don't know. But I'm just asking about getting some things maybe tidied up and some of
Yeah.
the things, because when we did the Ross property next to the post office, that was another one we all had a discussion about. And if you go across the street, that's acceptable. If you go to the next property to the former Ross house, that's acceptable, but the Ross house wasn't. Remember, we had to have
Yeah.
the contract zone. So some of those lines might have been good in 1965.
Yeah,
They're
that's
not
true.
current in the year 2019, as you had correctly pointed out.
Well, and our comprehensive plan process has recognized that mixed use
Correct.
and tried to give us some flexibility, which the contract zone is the instrument.
That's
Right.
right. That was my point earlier, is being flexible and
Right.
still being consistent with the general area, and that's what contract zoning
And of
allows
course,
us
as
to do.
as a volunteer planning board, that's what we're
Right.
asked to do, is
I just
consider the
wanted
neighborhood.
it to, I don't want it to look like we're making arbitrary decisions,
Yeah, I
because
know.
they're going to the council from here. And then, well, gee, what the planning board approved now? You know, we do have the ordinances and we do follow them pretty tightly, and thank God for Dave, he keeps us on the right path for these
Well,
things.
you
but-
guys keep me there too.
Right,
so.
right, but it's just the point that if we had a little bit more reflection on now what that new comprehensive plan said.
So, do you think it would be appropriate then, in view of what you're saying, that we put together it would properly be, in my opinion, a workshop?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd probably take several.
In the fall.
Okay, where we
Yeah,
obviously
start
invite the
this fall
public
and-
Address your
to
questions.
have their
to us.
input. So maybe we can talk about that some more, Dave, and
Yep.
put together a workshop, or however many we need. I could see it taking at least 2.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that we were able to, sorry, I'm just doing a text. I just didn't want to make it look like we were making arbitrary decisions.
Yeah, I
Because
understand.
I think if I was sitting here tonight, well, you know, they had their mind made up and da-da-da-da-da, and that was not
Well,
truly
no, I
the
don't know how
case.
they could walk out of here thinking this. It's the third time he's been back before us, so.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying that this, tonight was the first time I heard all this business about noise, okay? And I don't recall if we have a noise ordinance
We
off
do
the
not.
top of my head.
Again, it falls in, we have a nuisance ordinance,
Right,
And again, it goes back to reasonableness of
Right.
the hours and they talk about middle of the night with a bar. Can bars, I haven't been
By
to a bar
law,
in a
you
long time,
can,
can they stay
by
open all
law,
night now?
under the serve safe stuff, you can have liquor dispensed until it's either 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But if you get the 15-minute call and I take a drink from that bar and I set it at your table and you consume it, then there's a $15,000 fine associated with that. So it's very stringent on the time. So you heard him say 1 o'clock in the morning. That's the cutoff point right there. And on one other day, it's 1 hour later. So they're within their right of serving in a bar, and there's no question.
But 1
there.
o'clock to me is not the middle of the night.
No, no.
I'm thinking
But
more
their
3
point
or
was
4.
well taken about the nuisance calls because, oh gee, they're making too much noise. Glenna's point about, well, they're moving into a place, they know what it is, they should be fine with it. And, you know, but we can't make Jim have a contract that says, I recognize I'm next to a bar and I will not complain because there's excess noise until 1 o'clock in the morning.
I do think that with Alex Gray and Waterfront opening
That's gonna open.
that, I think that, you know, there are a few gaps. We may need to move to a noise ordinance in town.
And we've had several meetings
draw
with
on,
Alex
you know,
and
other
his
towns and be
architect
consistent with
and-
that.
But
right?
it's
And
like
that
the
may
chief
end up
said
being,
too, you know,
you
they
know,
have
Sure,
a certain
because Bangor's
decimal
gone
they
through
can
the
go
growing
by, and
pains
there's
with
nothing you can
waterfront.
do
And
until
what
they
we
go over
can,
that.
we can take best demonstrated practices from other towns that have gone through the process.
You got to admit, though, first time in my time as a volunteer on the planning board where the neighbors were worried about the effect they were going to have on the applicant, and that's the reason they opposed
Rather
it.
than the other way
Yeah,
around.
whether other way around.
I can see
Well,
their
think
point
they were,
though.
They were concerned that they were gonna get a lot of complaints.
Correct.
and it was
Well,
gonna
that's
influence
the
their
First
business.
Amendment. They have a right. He can complain about the way you part your hair. It doesn't mean he's
Correct.
I
Correct.
truly believe, and they can say they're not competing businesses, but they are, because you'd have people get off the wagon because there's no smoking.
Yeah.
That were veterans, that could go to the Legion, so the Legion would start cutting the prices on their drinks, so there was competition there.
Sure.
But
But
they're out of that business now.
Yes,
right?
that's gone.
But that's gone. It's
So-
been gone for a while.
I don't understand.
But
Anyway,
this,
you know what, as far as, I think we just did our job as far as,
Right.
okay, this is contract, is it consistent with the environment that we have today?
Right.
Right.
Yes, it is, and we all voted based on the way we wanted to vote, that's our
You know,
job.
and I, certainly I commend the American Legion. I'm a veteran
Absolutely.
myself. I obviously honor their service and all of that. This isn't about that. This was strictly
Absolutely.
about
It was more
a
personality.
property owner having the right to do,
Definitely.
within
But-
reason,
You can tell
what
they
they
both-
want to do.
But
And I
if we-
think the chief was exactly right. His job is to help manage this conflict. That is not our job.
Nope,
We're
that's
a
right.
voluntary planning board.
Yeah, he bailed me out there. That was very helpful.
but that's not the only area where there are conflicts in the zone uses. For instance, up where the mill is, there, if I remember correctly, there was some residential, industrial, commercial
Right on.
heartburn right there.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it currently sits at this point. It's not to discuss tonight, but if they in fact are developing that mill, I want to make sure that they can develop that mill the way they wish. And we've got mixed uses there too, so if they should decide they want to do X right there and it's a house vacant and it's not allowed, then we're going to go through this process again and.
Well, yeah, but there's no contract zone there. They are in an industrial zone, and then
Right.
those houses right
For
next door
them, we could,
are
if they bought the house, we pull the zone line
Right.
to encompass it, we're not.
Correct, but we still have to go through a forum to do that, right? Yeah, and so I'm just saying, it's probably time to look at these things, because.
But
they're
the
there.
fear, if you turn it into, say you were allowing the dwellings to stay there, but you move the zone to encompass those for future expansion for the mill, that limits them, they can't expand anything
Exactly.
on their house, or. It's
Exactly.
kind of what we did with Stillwater Avenue.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to find, I'm just trying to see other things that we need to be addressing.
So I think this
Because
fall
I
we'll
think
start some
Sanders in
workshops.
another location where that bridge is gonna be done at some point, and I don't know if they'll infringe on her property or not. I don't know what's gonna happen there, but then there's that trailer park
According to
behind that.
DOT, it's gonna be 2021.
Yeah, so it's around the corner.
When they'll tell us it's 2025.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be
Yeah,
too
they're
old
pretty
to live
tight
there.
I think
about
we've
how
heard a
much
few dates on
information
that,
they'll
so.
give out about it, too.
But I mean, there's different
say
pockets,
confident.
there's different pockets across the city that have different,
Like, I think where we are to the corner, we're the only residential on Stillwater Avenue, right?
correct.
Pretty much, yep.
The rest
How much
it's-
of that comp plan do you want? Do you
Well,
want
that's
just
where I
the
don't know how we
outline?
should dissect it. I don't remember if.
Because there was
the
so much
consultant-
background information,
Right.
census and
Well, didn't
wetlands
The
and.
the only thing that I think is pertinent to this discussion is the mixed-use zones that we discussed in the comprehensive plan. That was,
Because, well, there's a section that tasks the planning board to do certain things. Everything else
Right.
was more background
was like an outline,
information.
right?
That's right.
no,
So-
well, as part of the comprehensive plan, the action plan going forward, and there's no way we were gonna, she had a very aggressive schedule out there for us to
Right.
do all kinds of
Oh,
things.
sure.
and
Yep.
I didn't think that was gonna
Well,
happen.
and that was based on growth, and that growth doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Correct.
so.
Right.
But I do
That's the
agree that,
reality.
and it was accepted, and it was in the comprehensive plan, that the planning board consider mixed-use zones.
Oh, yeah.
We've done it already through, the contract zone has been our instrument.
Well, in the downtown is a mixed use.
Yeah.
Because you're
Sure it
allowed
is.
residential on the
Mm-hmm.
second floor and commercial on the first floor. So it is a mixed use.
Yeah.
You know,
We're
and
already
obviously,
there.
those mixed uses have to be appropriate, you know, the ammunition factory or the pig farm or something like that.
Right.
You know, it's obviously not appropriate, and
But
that's
the
what we're here
current,
for.
the current text, the black and white text that says thou shall in this zone, that zone,
Yeah.
does
Is
not
permitted,
match.
is permitted by planning board approval.
Correct, and so I think it's time to really take a look at it.
Yep.
Remember another hot spot we had at one point, and then it went away, was out on College Avenue, coming up towards the intersection. And
Oh, yeah, that
I
was a
mean,
hot
that
spot.
place where the big, I don't remember, Irving store or whatever the heck it's gonna be, it keeps getting leveler and leveler, and I don't know when it's gonna take place,
Well,
but a couple of those
it had-
properties are gone now, the houses.
Yeah, they haven't
So
done
the
it.
They have purchased those houses.
Correct,
Yeah.
and so at some point, we're gonna have some of that going on. and I
That's
think
all,
it
that
needs
is
a-
all.
That's
C1
already been
commercial.
approved.
Right, right,
well,
right. But I'm
the
just
site
saying,
plan,
is it
Right.
solid? Are some of the things that are coming, that are planned, are they solid in the areas that they're supposed to be?
Well,
in?
and the
So-
comprehensive plan is not a
No, it's a
final
guideline.
word, but
It's a
it's just a
guideline.
guiding document.
Right.
Because the previous comprehensive plan, when we just kind of routinely brought up a workshop on
Right.
changing the end of College Avenue there from residential to commercial on both sides of the road,
Sure,
they showed up with torches and pitchforks.
they sure did.
And we quickly said, okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Because-
but that's my point. You know, we don't have, we have these flare-ups because we rock the boat a little bit in some of these proposed developments, which are probably perfectly legit, a lot of them. It's just that in the black and white, it isn't there, or
Well,
the sense of the surrounding neighborhood isn't there, and so I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
but-
the comprehensive plan in that particular case had recommended that
Sure.
change.
Sure.
And we thought, you know, okay, well, when it was, we put the notices out, it was a workshop. All we were doing is talking about it.
Correct, exactly.
That's all it was.
Exactly.
And boy, they showed up and they were
Wild.
wild.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
okay,
Yep.
we won't talk about it.
But I don't think we're gonna resolve any of that tonight. I
No.
think
No.
that, you know what, there's obviously, you know, Russ had some concerns about having some controls around
I
contract
would
changing.
hasten to add, though, that I remember that. You remember that, don't you? You were here for that.
I was here.
And I mean, that, we just talked about talking about it. And
Oh, yeah.
they talked about suing us and
Oh, yeah.
everything. So if we have these workshops, we might be opening a can of worms.
Well, true, but I think we need to do
Hopefully.
it because of that comprehensive plan.
Just because you're concerned about potentially what could happen doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Right.
Right.
It's time to go.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of like, you know, anyway.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
I was trying to get there. Thank you so much.
Knock Irene out. Not literally, but. So what I'll do is I will
Come on,
get you
you
all.
do better than that.